Let me show you something. This is one of the coolest cars I've seen in quite some time, and it's not from a brand that you might be expecting. In fact, it's not even from a brand that many of you will even have heard of. Shame on you. This is the suave, new DS4. This car is just dripping with style. Check this out. As I approach, the flush door handles pop out automatically, as do the wing mirrors, just to say hello. And then as I get to the front, these lights illuminate. How cool is that? This actually has one of the coolest keyless entry systems in the game, but I'm not going to show you that right now. Let's focus on the design because I think it's a really handsome car. First of all, this really distinctive looking front grille with lots of jewel elements embedded inside it. You've also got almost diamond looking headlights at the front here. Really cool E-Tense logo, which indicates that this car is the plug-in hybrid. The only thing I'm not that keen on are these LED lights at the side, which look a bit like ostrich legs, badly drawn ostrich legs. Anyway, around the side, you've got 19-inch alloy wheels, which look interesting, but they do have some plastic cladding in there, which spoils the look ever so slightly, even though they do increase the car's aerodynamic efficiency. Some nice textures, which look really interesting without being too fussy, and lots of chrome. Chrome on the door handles, chrome on the lower section, chrome above the windows, and chrome on the DS badge on the C-pillar. I'm not normally a fan of this much chrome, but in this color, with this contrasting black roof, it really works well. Now, the back end, again, another really stylish angle on this car. Again, interesting rear lights, which almost look like jewels again, with this thin, contrasting chrome strip. And on the lower section, you've got these fake exhausts, tucked away on the bottom. Still, really good looking, nice design. DS, they've nailed it.
The DS4, like all DSs, is designed to appeal to people with a passion for style. It's a rival for cars like the A-Class and BMW 1 Series, despite looking like a fusion between a hatchback and a crossover. Entry-level DSs will set you back from just under 27 grand, with this top-spec plug-in hybrid model, the E-Tense 225, costing 43 grand. Pricey at the top end, but look what you get.
The interior is nice. I'm not quite sure where to start, but let's start with the doors. I really love, and it sounds weird, but I love these window controls up here. Whoever designed this must have charged an absolute fortune for this design because it looks really cool. I love the piano black underneath this textured satin chrome. Lovely. Plus you've got a floating door handle design down here. And it's not all about aesthetics. There's also some useful stuff. For example, the door pockets are lined in felt so your loose objects don't jangle all over the place as you drive. Steering wheel, nice and compact with buttons for your volume controls and your media playback. And just in front of that, a small screen for all your driver information, plus a nice big head-up display, which is quite useful. On this dashboard, you've got a fairly large screen. We're going to come back and talk about that a bit more later on. I've got a lot to say, believe me. Below that, some shortcut buttons for your heating controls. We'll definitely talk about that later. And then a nice, stylish engine start button, below which you'll find some storage, which includes a USB port and a couple of cup holders. A second screen, which we are definitely going to discuss later on. A physical volume knob gang, stand up. And down here, a little bit of storage in the center console with a USB port. And one of my favorite things about this car, in the glove box, look at this. You've got almost like a designer handbag to carry, well, whatever you want around it. It's got like, you know, the manuals and the welcome booklet and whatnot, but just look at how stylish that looks. Very cool.
In the back, there's ample space. Legroom is okay, and headroom is fine for me at 5'11", but taller passengers might struggle. There's a central armrest with a hatch giving access to the boot, cup holders, and 2 USB ports. There are vents there too, although these felt a little sticky in our test car. There is a sunroof available, but it's not panoramic, and the blinds are manually adjusted, so the cabin doesn't let in as much light as it could. As for the boot, well, it's a pretty decent size. 430 litres on the petrol model, which is reduced to 390 on the hybrid, as it has a battery under the floor.
On the subject of hybrids, This is the DS4 E-Tense, and it's a plug-in hybrid. That means it uses two separate methods of propulsion. One of them is a 1.6-litre petrol engine, and the other is an electric motor. Together, they make 225 horsepower, hence the name, DS4 E-Tense 225. And those horses are quite responsive. You put your foot down, and it takes off. It's not too bad. But actually, this car isn't about power in a straight line. What it's about is efficiency, and it's very good at that.
That battery living under the boot is a pretty healthy size, 12.4 kilowatt hours to be precise, and this allows the electric motor to lend a hand, meaning the petrol engine doesn't have to work as hard and burn as much fuel. The fuel economy numbers are insane, although that does depend on the state of charge and on which mode you're in.
There's a little switch down here on the center console. Right now I'm in sport mode. That's the mode you want when you're driving enthusiastically, but if I dial it back into hybrid mode, that's when the car is at its most efficient. In this mode, apparently the DS4 can manage between 183 and 232 miles per gallon, which is absolutely insane. Obviously, when the battery starts to run out, you get a bit less economy, but wow, still pretty impressive. If I use this button to select the electric mode, well then the car runs entirely on electric power alone. According to DS, it will do 38.5 miles on electric power, which is actually pretty impressive. Now, you're not always going to get that. If you're driving around with the aircon on or the heating on and you're a bit heavy-footed, then you can expect around 22 to 25 miles, which isn't too bad. But I've been averaging, when I try really hard, 3.2 miles per kilowatt hour. The battery in this car is 12.4 kilowatt hours. Multiply those two numbers together and you get 38.5 miles-ish. 39 to be precise, but you get the point. Now, my average commute is only around 20 miles, which means I can drive this car on electric power alone most of the time.
While that might sound like the best of both worlds, electric power for short commutes and petrol power for when you want to go a bit longer, allow me to issue a public service announcement, not just for the DS4, but for all plug-in hybrids.
If you're not charging the battery every single night, then effectively you're driving around with an empty battery, carrying a heavy battery pack and a heavy motor for no real benefit. Weirdly, a fully electric car is better for someone who doesn't have off-street parking and charging at home than a plug-in hybrid, because a plug-in hybrid must be constantly charged in order to deliver its optimum efficiency. Remember that. Another big advantage that this car has is how refined it is, especially when you're driving around in electric mode. So much more smooth and refined than the average petrol or diesel car, especially when you're driving in stop-start traffic. There is a small problem with this car though that I've noticed, and that is whenever you're parked up, it does have cooling fans that run pretty aggressively, and they can be quite noisy when you're stopped outside your house at night, for example. And even when the fans stop, the car still makes a faint kind of electrical noise that almost sounds like you got tinnitus, like a ringing in your ear, constantly.
You might also want to bear in mind the charge times, 7 hours on a 3-pin socket or around 2 hours from a 7 kilowatt home wall box. There is no rapid charging, so charging away from home will be slow. But because it's part electric, you can enjoy other benefits normally associated with an EV, like proper preheating and pre-cooling so the car is at an optimum temperature before you get inside. You can also choose to drive on petrol power for a selected portion of your trip, saving your battery for city driving.
Okay, so earlier on, I did promise you I'd show you around the technology in the DS4, and it is good, but it's also infuriating at the same time. I'll start with the good. The main menu is quite straightforward and easy to understand, and also there is a physical button for taking you back to the home screen. So if I go into navigation and I want to go home, I press that and it takes me back. Good. But how do you do simple things like, I don't know, turn the heating or the aircon up? Well, to do that, you've got to use one of these columns on the left and right of the screen, and you've got to press the plus button to turn the heating up. But then you ask yourself, how do I adjust the fan speed? And what you've got to do is press the number of the temperature, and that will take you into a totally different screen where you have to use a slider to adjust the fan speed. On most cars, it's color coded. You've got blue for cold and red for hot. In this, everything is the same color. It's just not intuitive. And also, check this out, right? If I happen to be in navigation, I can't actually adjust my temperature in the car while I'm using the nav. To do that, I've got to get out of the nav, lose where I'm going, and then adjust my heating, which all just seems a bit sort of complicated and unnecessary. And then there's the heated steering wheel, right? Which is good, it's got one, but how do you actually turn it on? Well, you've got to press that column and then go into the steering wheel button and then press the on button over here. Why can't I just have a button on the steering wheel? Keep it simple, come on. Look, there's also some shortcut buttons down here, but it seems to be for shortcuts for things that you don't actually use that often. And then look at this, there's these weird little triangles for adjusting the direction of the vents up and down. How do you adjust the direction of the vents left and right? On another switch over here, a little circular dial for some reason which moves the direction left and right. Why can't I have just a little knob in the middle where I move left and right, up and down without having to faff around and wrap my head around whole new types of systems and technologies that just don't make any sense in any world that I want to live in? Also, let's talk about this little screen down here, shall we? Now, the point of this, if I go back into the home button, is that it gives you shortcut access to your 6 favorite features in the car. You hold your finger on it and then it changes screen and you can move left, right, up and down with your finger on it. Kind of like a mouse trackpad. But is it any good? Well, no, because as you've seen, if you want to get to your shortcuts, like navigation, for example, they're on the screen anyway. So that just seems a little bit unnecessary. Another thing you can use it for is fingerprint recognition. So if I want to enter an address into the sat nav, I just type it in here. Let's see if it works, shall we? I'll type the letter A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and what have I got? Absolutely nothing. It's just, look, that probably cost £2,000. Either give me a system that works for £2,000 or knock £2,000 off the price and get rid of this. It's infuriating.
Right, is it worth your money? Well, as I said, pricing for the entry-level petrol starts at 26 grand on the road. That's in line with what you'd pay for a 1 Series or A-Class, but on that model you don't get niceties like the chrome grille, keyless entry, head-up display or reversing camera. For those, you'll have to spend 30 grand or more. If you want everything you see here, including the plug-in hybrid powertrain, that's 43 grand. A Mercedes A-Class plug-in hybrid will set you back 36 grand. Worth bearing in mind.
Okay, I was letting off a bit of steam there, but I feel like I kind of have to because the negative points do stand out, especially when the rest of the car is so good and the rest of the DS4 is brilliant. A couple of things I love about it: the suspension, it's really, really smooth. Even when you're driving on rough roads, it seems to iron out the worst of the bumps really, really well. And that means it's just a pleasant car to go for a drive in. And then when you want to have some fun in it, it's actually really enjoyable. So we've got a couple of bends coming up here. I'll go in hot. And look at that. It's got a tremendous amount of grip. There's a little bit of feedback through the wheel as well, so you know exactly when that grip's about to run out. And it's just composed and calm. And then you put your foot down. Do you know what? This is actually, it's a good laugh. I know it's efficient and that's the big thing about it, but it's also a lot of fun. I guess the big question then is, do I like it? I think it holds its own against the likes of the Mercedes A-Class and the BMW 1 Series. It's quirky, it's different, but to me, it's right up there with those rivals. This is a brilliant car to look at, a brilliant car to sit in, and a brilliant car to drive. If you're looking for a solid, stylish alternative to the established cars in this class, the DS4 is well worth checking out.